What up, dog? This is an early 2000s Lexus, and welcome to my cribs. Hang on, let's try something else. Actually, you might recognize this car less from Jay-Z and more from your grandmother's driveway. But 100,000 grandmas can't be wrong, right? Whoa. This is a 2005 Lexus LS430, and for the 9 people that decided to click on this video, congratulations! I have found you the best, super affordable, ultra luxury, full-size sedan in the world. You see, everybody nowadays wants an old Beamer or an old Mercedes because yes, they are quite cool. There's not a whole lot cool about a gray Lexus from the mid-2000s, but they are such incredibly good cars with a lot of insane gadgets and gizmos, such as the key. And I think, and I'm pretty sure this is correct, the LS was the only model in the Toyota Lexus family to include this particular key. And it genuinely looks like a chisel that you would use to like remove paint off of a door or something. Now, to use the key, you can of course extend the switchblade, but it actually has proximity sensing, even in 2005, so you keep the key in your pocket, and then you can use a button on the door to lock, and then unlock the vehicle to enter. This is going well. Swimmingly, there we go, to enter the side of the vehicle. Okay, not that surprising, but what is surprising is the ignition. You see, there is no push button start in this car. Instead, you have this little twist dial that you use to turn the vehicle on. But of course, because it has proximity control, you don't need to insert the key. You can just twist the knob, but it's almost as if Lexus knew their customers were, well, we're a little bit elderly and we're probably used to using the key. So what you can do as well is take the chisel side of the key, insert it into the ignition, and then turn it that way as well. So you've got both options depending on your age bracket. Now, even though Lexus does have a little bit of a reputation for being less than advanced in some of its technology compared to like the German rivals, this LS does have some insanely cool features, and we're gonna start with the oscillating vents. So take a look at the vents. Now, of course, you can adjust them like normal. They're just standard vents, right? Not quite. You see, if you select this option here in the climate menu, you'll notice they start to move back and forth. That's right. This car has a feature where it will direct air around the cabin just to keep you nice and cool from all sides of your body. I think that's the coolest thing. And then when you turn the car off, they return to the middle just so that if you have OCD, you don't go crazy. Now in 2005, Lexus gave you a fairly basic looking touchscreen display, and you're probably thinking, well, you know, it's ancient and not very good, but you would be oh so wrong, because these older Toyota and Lexus systems are so easy to use. They are the best systems. Now if you take a look down here, another nice feature in this Lexus, the heated and ventilated seats, even in 2005, so you can push these little knobs and they pop out and then disappear just so they look a little bit cleaner, but you of course have heating functionality and cooling functionality. Now, one thing which you will find on the inside of the Lexus is acres and acres of wood, and it is pretty high quality overall, but it certainly does date the interior a little bit. But everything kind of pops out of this vehicle. So here, you've got a little pop-out ashtray and cigarette lighter. Here, you've got a pop-out CD changer, 6-disc, and here, you've got a random cubby, which is fairly useful. But you've got wood in the middle, you've got wood across the dash. There's just so much wood. Look at all the wood. It's up here, it's down here by the window switches, it's on the steering wheel. Lexus knew that, you know, their slightly older demographic was really into, well, wood. Porsche and BMW are known for their disappearing cup holders, but Lexus was not left out of the fun. Push in on this little cubby down there, and there pop out the cup holders. The only difference between this system and, of course, the Germans is that with 251,000 miles, these still work. Now, Lexus did have this interesting feature for a lot of decades where when you turn the vehicle off, the gauges disappear, including the dials, and then the dials appear to be floating out of nowhere, and I do think that's a really cool look. Some other interesting things on the cluster side of stuff, it's got a range indicator, but it's range approximately. Maybe that's because they didn't want to get sued. Maybe it's because they weren't super confident in the range indicator, but I do like that little approximately thing. And then you can, of course, change the information by pushing this little display button on the steering wheel. And some other cool things in here. Average fuel economy 23.4 is really not all that bad for such a large V8 powered luxury boat. Lots of automatic features in this Lexus. Of course, you've got these beautifully equipped power seats with lumbar control, even on the passenger side, which is nice. You've got memory seats, but my favorite feature up here, the seat belt risers. It's power on both the driver and the passenger side, and that is not where the power accessories end, because a little button down here, push it, and you've got a rear shade that glides out of the bottom portion of the deck lid. Two other buttons of note down here in the center of the Lexus. You've got a button for track off. That button has never been pushed in this car, almost guaranteed. And then above that is a little button labeled Per Ect and Snow. Now this is for the electronically controlled transmission. That's what ECT stands for. That is the power mode. And then this is the snow mode, which helps you with second gear launches when things get wet and slippery. Now, one thing which I never really understood about Lexus of this era, and really still today, is they hide a lot of buttons. There's a lot of hidden things in this car, which you really can't see when you're driving. So like over here, we've got the automatic mirror fold. Push that button in. There's also a button to turn off the adjustable headlight. So it's got steerable headlights. You can turn that off over here. You got your parking sensors, a little cubby, and then down here is a lot of fun stuff. So if you take a look at this keyhole, if you wanted to valet the car, you can turn this key using the manual key blade so that valets can't get in your trunk. And then way underneath, over here by the knee airbag, there's, believe it or not, a couple of little switches, one to turn off the proximity control, and then another to adjust the volume of, I think, the beeper. So lots of weird stuff under there. Now, the back seat of this Lexus is not, from a feature standpoint, as impressive as some of like the BMWs and the Mercedes of the era, although there was an available like prestige package back here where you could get a lot more buttons, but a standard LS like this is not as feature laden as you might expect. Now, you got a couple of nice features, like up here, you've got these little mirrors that glide down from the ceiling ever so slowly with a big vanity light. You also have a feature where you can move the passenger seat forward and recline it, so you've got more legroom on this side. And then you do actually have one really nice thing back here. If you open up this cubby, cup holders and heated rear seats. But in terms of like massage, the seat moving adjustability, those are very rare on LSs. For the most part, you get like ashtrays and a couple of little tidbits here and there. I was talking to Brendan, the LS owner, and this is an interesting trim because it's kind of a sporty model. So you get these really nice looking 18-inch wheels, which have aged pretty well in this fantastic gray color. And then you also have like LED taillights and the dual exhaust, which was remarkably sporty for someone in their 90s who bought this car. But let's talk about the trunk, because it is one of the best parts. First of all, it is positively enormous. It just seems to go on forever and ever and ever. And then way back there is this little itty bitty ski pass-through, but no foldable seats. And Brendan even has the original floor mats in the original packaging, which I think is pretty cool. But the best feature in the trunk, hands down, is the toolkit, which lives in its own little cubby. And then let's see what it looks like. Let's see what Lexus gave you in 2005. All right, so you get a little tire iron here. You get a set of pliers. Kind of low quality for Lexus. Not that those would ever be used by anybody ever, but you know, kind of funky that Lexus was still giving you tools even in the mid-2000s. Overall though, a phenomenal trunk, extremely usable, and when this car goes to Pebble Beach in 50 years, these are going to be highly desirable. This Lexus LS is a third generation of the model. Now, it was called the Toyota Celsior in Japan, and they discontinued the Celsior the same year as the end of the third generation LS, which was 2006. This was a 2005, so it's a post-facelift, and it actually has some pretty impressive power and performance specs. So under the hood, you'll find a 4.3-liter V8 called the 3UZ FE with 290 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque. This is a timing belt engine, but when mated to the 6-speed automatic in this vehicle, 0 to 60 was claimed to be under 6 seconds, like 5.9, so quite a performance machine. And of course, rear-wheel drive was the only driveline available. Now, the third generation of the LS was really the first time that they had a major overhaul of the design. So the first first and the second were very conservative. The third gen, you can really tell they were targeting the Mercedes of the era. Everything's a little bit more swoopy, everything's a little bit more laid back. This thing is a fantastic piece of engineering, and this is why you buy a Lexus, right? Because a BMW from the mid-2000s, a Mercedes, it's just going to give you problems. I'm sure there's going to be someone online that'd be like, oh, I drove mine for 300,000 miles and I didn't do a single oil change. But of course, that's false. A Lexus of this era, even with 250,000 miles, it's going to feel tight. It's going to last another 200K probably. Brendan, thank you for coming down.
Hey, my pleasure, Tom.
And showing me your Lexus. And this car has a cool story, right? How did you find this thing?
So I found it at auction, actually.
Okay.
It's a one-owner vehicle. Person had always maintained it at their Lexus dealer. I think it was an older couple that owned it.
Yeah.
I bought it at the auction and quickly realized that it needed to have that transmission rebuilt.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Did you know that going in?
No, because unfortunately I didn't test drive it at the auction. So I was thinking at the time, man, I'm getting such a screaming deal, $3,000 for a Lexus LS430. This is awesome. And then spent just that much for rebuilding the transmission.
So now you're at it, what, about $6 grand?
Yeah, which I think is still a really good deal for how much car I've got here.
This is a lot of leather and wood for $6,000.
Absolutely.
So what do you like about this car? What's your favorite thing about it?
So I really love like 90s and 80s car boxy styling, and I think this kind of has a little bit of that 90s Mercedes S-Class styling, but it has the reliability of a Toyota, and it's got a lot of the modern features that you even see on some of today's cars.
Well, what I think is special about this one is it has 252,000 miles almost, right?
Yeah.
Just a shade under that. And I mean, it's perfect, right? Everything works in here. The engine, I mean, you could not tell that engine is running by just sitting at an idle.
Yeah.
Right? The steering is light. Even the suspension feels pretty good.
Yeah, it's a solid little car. I mean, I just can't believe how well that this is held up, considering it's essentially gone to the moon.
Yes, it has literally gone to the moon in terms of mileage.
Yep.
All right, here, let's give it a little squirt. Wow. All right, so not bad at all.
No.
4.3 liter V8, and I mean, you can't really hear it.
Nope.
But it really does give you a little shove when you put your foot into it.
It does. I mean, when you compare it to modern cars, it's maybe as fast as some of the more modern cars, so it'll keep up with traffic. But for 2005, this thing was legitimately quick.
I think what Lexus does pretty much better than any manufacturer is, I mean, on the face of it, like, there's not a lot of flash to them. You know, there's not a lot of like insane things where you show your friends and you're like, wow, look at this and this and this and this. But then you get in them and you realize there is 9 tons worth of sound deadening in here, right? Yep. And all the leather feels like it could be made out of nuclear grade materials. I mean, this thing is testament to that. 250,000 miles, most cars would be right at the end of their life.
Yeah.
I mean, everything would be shot on a typical 250,000 mile car. The suspension, the electronics, the engine, for the most part, would just be at the end of its life. But this feels like it could be a 50,000 mile Lexus.
Yeah, I think it's maybe midway through its life at most.
It's just crazy, right?
Yeah.
And of course, like, I do understand that like people like the Mercedes a little bit more to some extent because they had, you know, like the crazy interiors, and more of them had the Distronic feature. Although you were saying you could get adaptive cruise on these.
You can, yeah. It was an option that it's pretty rare, because I think it was a pretty expensive option back in the day that most people just weren't willing to fork over the money for. But they did have a radar-based adaptive cruise control. So it's a very early adaptive cruise control, but it will get the job done.
But even if you just don't get that right, it still is just such a good car to drive.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, there's really little part of me, even though I've been in this thing for 30 seconds, that would like prevent me from being like, yeah, let's go drive this to Nevada, like the middle of Death Valley.
I just took it on a trip down to Arizona from Colorado as well, like last week.
And was it reliable?
It was bulletproof. I had no problems whatsoever.
So you've had this car for like a year now, you said, right?
Yep.
What are your plans with it? Are you going to hold on to it? Or are you going to sell it?
This is a keeper.
This is a keeper, huh?
This is a keeper for me. Yeah, I have no plans to sell this thing in the near future because I think it's just going to last for me. I can have a daily driver that's comfortable, that's fun to drive, and not have any issues or high cost of maintenance.
The biggest issue with it from a Colorado standpoint is, of course, it's like a rear-wheel drive. Yeah. You know, nowadays, pretty much every car in this class has at least an option for all-wheel drive, when that really wasn't a thing 15 years ago or 17 years ago. But if you lived in a place where that you could drive this year round?
Yeah.
I would.
I wouldn't hesitate to. In fact, I'm drive it most of the year around. I just don't drive it in the snow, but I drive it all the other times of the year.
Well, Brendan, thank you, buddy.
Hey.
This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, good to see you.
Beautiful Lexus. I appreciate you coming down and seeing me. And then I think we got more videos, right? Because you got a W8 Passat.
Yep.
With a manual?
You do. 6-speed manual.
You got a Baja Bug?
I do.
So you're going to be a staple on the channel now.
Awesome.
Now, in the past hour or so filming this video, my whole opinion of this car has changed dramatically because I kind of went into thinking, yes, it's going to be very well made, but it's going to be incredibly boring. But the 3rd Gen LS is actually chocked full of really interesting features. And when you combine that with the reliability and the ultimate driving experience that, well, that's BMW saying, the sedate driving experience that Lexus gives you, it is a fantastic thing to own, and for a small amount of money, you just can't beat it. I think that this with a slightly bigger wheel on it would actually be a really cool piece of design as well. And let me know what you think in the comment section below. A huge thank you to Brendan, who is just chocked full of interesting vehicles. He was pulling them out of nowhere. We'll see you on the next video. And as always, check out TFL Classics for the latest and greatest in classic vehicle reviews. And one more thing, if you actually want your vehicle featured, send me an email. I started a new email, TFLclassics@gmail.com, and maybe we'll get you on the show.